All right. Welcome to NGF News or Navigating Global Frontiers. My name is Joshua Cheatham.
And my name is Alexandro Spajo.
Yeah. We both go to the University of New Haven, majoring in international affairs. Just some college students that want to have fun, discuss global issues, and update people who maybe not read the news every day, stuff like that. We are a brand new podcast. This is going to be the first episode, just to kind of give an update on how the podcasts are going to be run. We're going to upload twice a week on Mondays. Those are going to be current events and issues. Everything's going to be an open discussion. And Wednesdays is going to be a topic of the week that we choose on a global issue that could be having implications on the future. So yeah, we do have social medias you can follow. On Instagram, it's ngf.news. On Twitter, you can follow us at ngf_news. And on TikTok, you can also follow us at ngf_news. We're just gonna get right into it. We kind of want to keep
So,
this as a raw discussion and an open discussion. So first topic.
all right, so for our first topic, it's been very all over the headlines, and we have the Germany sending Leopard tanks to Ukraine. So, as everyone knows, this is major. This could cause a lot of future implications between Russia and the West, but nonetheless, this is still all headlines. So, what we're going to do is we're going to discuss how we got here, and then any future implications that could cause any issues between the West and Russia. So to get started, why this all happened? Well, Ukraine has requested additional military support. I mean, they constantly do it. Like they need that support. There's always two sides to this, and one side is like, all right, we're done giving enough support, but the other side says we need to give them more support. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I'll just read something from Senator Coons of Delaware, who says that he wants to send tanks to Ukraine and is basically putting pressure, hoping that Germany was. Um, it's an interesting topic for sure, putting pressure on Germany, considering that they also just invested $130 billion
Into the
into their
military.
military
Yeah.
over this past summer. It's you're putting pressure on an already pressured government who's less than 600 miles away from
Yeah.
Russia. So they're pretty upset. But they're also very scared, understandably. Uh, the biggest reason why people are putting pressure onto Germany at the moment because they are scared of a concerned of a Russian offense in the spring, which
You know, about that, I actually read something recently that Russia just completed a mobilization of 300,000 troops. I didn't
300,000?
I swear
I thought they did that. I thought they were going to, but they stopped.
I read something where it was like they complete I don't know if it's 300,000 exactly, but some sort of mobilization is completed. So maybe they could all the pieces are
Like,
uh putting together, but I mean, who knows what could happen in the spring?
oh
Probably
yeah.
they're waiting for winter to clear up. That's obvious. There's troops out there. I've seen some horrific pictures of like it was like this morning I saw something of like the Russians, some Russian top military official's daughter just chilling in a pool in Dubai, and then we have a Russian soldier in the trenches freezing his ass to death. So it kind of shows you just like
Yeah.
the
Um,
horrors of the war and what everyone else at the top of Russia is doing. So
yeah. If you know anything about World War II and its history and anything pre World War II, a lot of people, the Germans specifically, decided they thought it was a good idea to try and get through the Russian winters. But
yep.
the Russians are smarter than that, and they're gonna tactically plan throughout this winter to not do that. And I think that's one of the things that is actually going to give the West an advantage in terms of military planning and structuring for Ukraine, especially because Biden did announce that they are pledging another 2.5 billion.
Oh
Whether
yeah.
you agree with that or not, that is not what we're here to give you. But this includes sophisticated armored vehicles and six Abram tank.
Was it
Those
six or was it
Abram.
more?
I thought it was more than I thought it was six. There's a big train I saw a video of going
Oh,
straight through with just armored vehicles,
yeah.
but they're giving them an Abram tank. Oh, sorry, that I was right. He is right. There's one Abram tank, and Spain is giving six of their Leopard A two A4 tanks.
Yep.
They're giving them six, and then the Germans are now sending two after the pressure.
Hmm.
So they're under pressure from Latvia, Estonia, Lithuania, and the U.S. Some interesting countries, obviously border countries to Russia, but it's surprising that they would have phones to. Of course, they are backed by the U.S.
Yeah.
to go after. Tell Germany, please send them tanks,
Yeah.
which I find interesting.
Um, what did they give beside what kind of tanks? Because I read something they were just giving like modernized Soviet tanks or
The
like
Germans?
no, just like in general, just like Western countries.
Yeah, they were
They
giving.
weren't it wasn't modern weaponry. They
Yeah,
were giving them like weapons like javelins and all of that.
yeah.
But nothing really like crazy.
Yeah, the armored vehicles were just kind of older Soviet and older
Yeah.
American stuff, older German stuff, because obviously, if you know, the United States are constantly updating. We're in Generation 6 vehicles, the Abrams
Yep.
X, if you have seen it yet. The Generation 6 thing is a beast, indestructible, and there's no machine gunner at the top. It's an automated machine gun.
Yep.
So they are pushing pretty hard to fight back the spring. Um, which is interesting to me because I think the Russians are getting so close to being defeated.
I don't know. We gotta wait till spring to see what they've got planned. Like this winter has been pretty quiet. For the Russia-Ukraine war. It's just been a lot of rocket launches and
Mhm.
uh deadly battles in Bakhmut. But I feel like this winter was just a build up on from both sides. So I feel like spring it could get much worse, unfortunately. Going back to the $2.5 billion security package, I wanted to talk about that and what it included. Most importantly, I want to talk about the HIMARS rocket system.
Oh yeah,
That one is yeah. So for those who don't know, the HIMARS rocket system is a what like almost like a medium to long range rocket missile system that can shoot
yeah,
up to like 60 up to 60 miles.
yeah. It's like
It's kind
a
of like what the
guided
Russians are.
missile, right?
Yeah, something like that. It's like it's what the Russians are using for their long range missile trucks, but the HIMARS are much better, way
More
better,
accurate.
more accurate. Yeah, so that might turn the tide of the war with the additional Abrams tanks that they're sending too, plus additional ammunition, striker vehicles, and
Yeah.
infantry vehicles.
Well, it's so funny to me because, well, actually, just to go off of that, after Germany pledged that they were going to send the tanks, there was actually just a bombing in Kiev
Yeah,
and Kiev. So they are kind of trying to send a message. It's not gonna work, but whatever. My favorite part about this whole invasion is the Russian training. The fact that they have very few fifth generation, no sixth generation, and very few fourth generation vehicles, and little training on them.
oh,
So they sent out these poor Russian pilots in 300-mile-per-hour planes with no training,
yeah,
and so they're crashing their planes
yep,
trying to hit low level cities versus, if an American pilot did that, it'd be pretty easy.
for them, yeah.
They do it with
They're
ease.
just thrown in those cockpits.
Yeah.
They're like, we need you to hit this target. You come
Oh,
back? I don't know.
yeah. I mean, how many you see in the news every day, especially in the first couple months of the war, where it was just Russian planes just going down, videos of Russian planes and jets not being able to accurately hit targets
Right.
because they don't have the training. So I think it was funny that.
Oh, speaking of training, I didn't
Oh,
mean
yeah.
to cut you off.
No,
Do
go
you
ahead.
think these new mobilized troops that could come out in spring have that necessary training? Were they
Oh boy.
training throughout winter?
I don't
I
know.
think during like them trying to create their mobilization, you know what? Let's see.
Yeah.
But
Just to give some statistics on the Russian military, they're the third largest in terms of standing army in the world. Or sorry, fourth largest in terms of standing army. Number one is China. Number two is the U.S. Three is India, and then number four is Russia. I could be messing that up, but I'm pretty. Those are the top four. I know that for a fact. Russian standing army is about 1 million.
yep.
Their reserve is very small. And so I I know that United States intelligence over the years has said that the Russian army and Putin are like overblowing exactly how good they are, and I think we've seen that. So from what we've been seeing, I don't think these 300,000 troops are going to be trained at all
So
or
going
very
back to
well.
the 300,000 troops, this is according to Ukrainian intelligence. They say that there could be another um, mobilization. It is unclear if Putin will announce another round of mobilization, but other than that, I mean,
Yeah.
it could be possible, especially for the spring. We'll see when that because Ukrainian intelligence is always, has not been the best at. They've been throwing
No.
some big claims around sometimes.
And that's just to get the West riled up and
Yeah,
afraid, especially Europe, because Europe is the biggest or the second biggest donation of weapons to
yeah.
and lending of weapons to Ukraine. But yeah, Russia, we've always feared Russia. My opinion, China is higher on the list than Russia.
Well, we feared Russia, but yet again, there has been some pushback from Germany and the U.S. Not from the U.S. essentially, but Germany had it want to because it feared that, if this is just going to be, like World War II, not like exactly World War II, where they're sending German tanks to fight
Yeah,
Russian troops, where we saw German tanks fighting, Soviet uh, tanks. So that's the reason why they push back on all this, and it's because of that fear and
yeah,
that kind of like morality issue, really.
yeah.
Um,
Within the diplomatic community, there is a new official term that we were just reading about before this. It's called Scholzing. If you don't know, the Prime Minister of, or not the Prime Minister, sorry, the Chancellor of Germany, his last name is Scholz. It's Olaf Scholz. And Scholzing is basically a verb. It says communicating good intentions, only to use, find, invent any reasons imaginable to delay these or prevent them from happening. So this poor chancellor was thrown in last fall to Germany. Russia invades Ukraine in February,
energy
and
issues,
energy issues are striking. He's been thrown into
inflation, everything. He's been thrown into the.
everything. So you could kind of sympathize with him on why he was hesitant on sending tanks in general, considering that they only just pledged $114 billion.
I mean,
They
not
probably
only
don't have
that,
many
their
tanks
country is
left.
getting threatened too by Russia. You send tanks to
Yeah,
Ukraine, we'll make another world war.
yeah,
It's like, I mean, that's what Russia considers it technically. Like they think they're in a war with the West now
yeah. They
after
are.
they sent those tanks. But
Um,
do you think that by the time the Ukrainians get their Leopard and Abrams tanks, how long do you think it'll take them to train with the technology? Because I think that they might learn the Leopard quicker, but the Abrams is a little bit more complicated. And how will they train people to use the Abrams?
that's a good question. The Abrams tank is different from many tanks because it's incredibly quick. It's
Hmm.
like it can hit like 40, 50 miles an hour.
Yeah,
If
let's
you
see.
go, yeah, find the exact. It's the Abram. It's this Abram ones or
M1
M2s.
Abrams,
Yeah,
yeah.
M1 Abrams. Yeah,
I
so
don't think they're sending out. Let's see.
they're indestructible, which is a good thing. So even if they do screw up, they're not gonna break
Well, they're tough.
or get shot down or whatever. The leopards, on the other hand, are not as indestructible, but they're slower and probably, I would assume, easier to navigate considering they're an older
Yeah, you're right.
generation.
M1 Abrams have a maximum speed of 42 to 45
Yeah,
miles per hour. And like on cross country terrain, they can handle a top speed of 25 to 30.
yeah,
But yeah.
they're impressive vehicles.
While the Soviet era tanks have a top speed of 37 with cross country maximum of
Yeah,
27. So I
and
mean Russia might send their own like more modern tanks now
we
um
could,
to
but
Ukraine.
here's the great thing about this winter, which is why I said earlier that I think that we're going to have the advantage. Is that, well, historically speaking, our intelligence in the United States has said that the Russian military is undertrained, under-equipped, and they're not really good at training anyway.
Yeah.
The United States obviously is very well trained, and NATO is very well trained. And right across the border in Poland, there is a NATO base. And if I were Ukraine, I would have sent every person I can right now So when those tanks arrive, they will arrive in Poland, I believe, before they go to Ukraine, and
Absolutely.
train them on how to drive them in Poland
But
for
that
the next
training
couple of
program might take
months.
a little longer.
It might, but they have the winter,
They do have they have until like March, April. So
March and April,
do
so
you
they,
think 1 month might be enough though?
yeah, I think so. You,
They got to dedicate themselves for 1 month to
if
learn
they
the
want to
in
win,
ins and
yeah,
out,
exactly.
learn the manual, everything.
If they want to win the war, they will be out there 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, learning how to move that tank. And if they become efficient in moving those tanks, they're indestructible and they can force the Russians back. I mean, you can't even blow them up from under the tank. You have to get inside. And even then, you have to be like a lot of
You have to
explosives.
have been very lucky to get on top of that tank.
Yeah, it's an it's an incredibly tough time to destroy an
And
Abrams, even a Leopard.
it's gonna be interesting to see like an actual battle between an Abrams tank and a Russian T tank,
Yeah, but it's going to be the first time where we see
U.S.
U.S.
equipment.
versus equipment versus Soviet modern Soviet equipment.
I mean, we've seen that,
You
but
know,
it's more like the tanks now part because
yeah,
they have they have the arms, they have the rocket systems. Now they're getting our infantry vehicles as well, everything. So
it's
this is gonna be pretty interesting to see
yeah,
our equipment versus Russian equipment, and we're seeing that even like Ukrainians are not as well as trained as
yeah,
American troops, but yet just our equipment alone has been able to
yeah,
fend off the Russians. So
yeah.
it's like
People
these tanks could be massive.
people underestimate Ukrainian special forces. Those guys are awesome. They work directly with SAS in England and United States Navy SEALs and Delta Force in NATO. So they're them along with Polish special forces, along with the GIGN in France, are are very well trained in comparison. So there's a lot more special forces that can go into Russia versus Russia, which only has like Spetsnaz, and their A group is the only real big.
Wagner, Spetsnaz.
Yeah,
Well, Wagner's a PMC,
yeah.
but will we see special forces on the ground like ours?
If Russia wants any, oh ours, oh no, we won't see any. See, they might be there doing recon missions,
Oh,
like collecting
yeah,
intelligence.
I'm sure the CIA is already on that,
Oh yeah, for
collecting
sure.
intelligence and
Yeah, I mean we have ex-contracting SEALs probably out there at the moment collecting intelligence, and obviously Ukraine's probably out there.
yeah,
But on the standpoint of Russia, and I'm obviously not pro-Russia, but if I am a general and I am strategically trying to win this war, I am going to be deploying Spetsnaz in the spring to
yep.
take out.
Spetsnaz already boots on the ground though,
Yeah, but
fully or
not fully, but not. They're. I mean, they're not doing anything. They're losing.
they're losing. Yeah,
If they want to win, they're going to have to go in and take out tactical areas where the Ukrainians are, their base, wherever their bases, their temporary setups are, and collect more intelligence because they're clearly missing something. Because every time they get to the borders of Kiev, they just get pushed back
yep.
every time. So
Instantly.
they're missing something. But hopefully they don't figure that out.
Will so now to cap off this this topic, you know, what are some future implications? Do you think that sending Western, well, I mean, we've been sending Western arms to Ukraine, but is the tanks, the HIMARS and rocket systems enough to say to Russia, listen, enough is enough. We're declaring war with you guys.
For I mean,
Will Russia have essentially the balls to do this?
uh, Putin's crazy. We all know that, but he's not crazy enough to relinquish his power without any allies and go to war. Putin does not have China anymore. China, before they were abstaining anyway, but now China's like, okay, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You are getting your butts kicked for the past year. Um, there's no reason they should keep going.
Right.
If you're a Russian general, you're a strategic planner. There's no reason. And I will see what happens with the tanks, but I believe the fact that there are going to be 9 indestructible tanks in Ukrainians' military's hands versus Russian tanks, which yeah, they're indestructible, but they don't know how to use them.
Not as
Not
technologically advanced as the Abrams and
yeah.
Leopards as well.
I think there's going to be a large spring offensive. I think you'll see the same thing happen. They'll
Oh, this
get
is going to be a bloody
picked all the way
spring
back.
summer.
Oh, it'll be worse. It'll be worse than
Yeah,
last year
it's
for
going to
sure.
be some of the toughest fighting, and maybe with
Yeah,
this toughest fighting, it could just be enough for the Russians to say,
yeah, because
"This
I
is it for us."
I think it'll be the fourth time in the last year where they'll get kicked all the way back to Kiev and then lose and then get kicked all the way back to Russia.
Yep.
And I think they'll just be upset.
Do you think the areas of Luhansk and Donetsk um, will be sort of kind of like Russian territory in order to cap off this fighting, or will the Ukrainians be able to push them out of these areas
I
as
think
well?
if you're Ukraine and if you're Zelensky,
Probably
the
like
smart thing to do is to just
just let it,
give it to Russia.
whatever. Yeah.
They're Russian speaking, and they don't want to be there. And for people who are pro-Ukraine, by the way, I don't like to put opinions out there, but for people who are pro-Ukraine, they terrorize those Russian people.
Oh yeah.
They kill them. They don't give them enough like energy to live. They don't pay them. They leave them in the slums. They trash them. And whether or not nobody agrees with what Putin does, but you can sit there and understand where Putin's coming from in saying that we are going in there because our people are being treated like crap.
Yeah, they
Putin,
consider themselves Russian. They're Russian speaking. It's kind of just like, yeah, I mean, of course, this whole war is absolutely terrible, right? But it's not to say, like Russia. Of course, Russia's two main reasons was try to rebuild like the Soviet Union and stop Western expansionism of NATO. But yet again, it's like those two areas have just been very, very hot, essentially hot and debatable.
yeah,
And if Zelensky wants to end this war quick, I mean, he has tried to say like, "Hey, Luhansk and Donetsk is yours," but Russia disagreed.
yeah,
I think they're going to go back to that initial offer again, maybe after the spring summer, after like the possibly like deadly battle going on, and be like, listen, like we know we declined this offer, but let's put it on the table again, and then let's see where we can go from
yeah,
here. You could take like officially have now Crimea because Crimea has been debatable as well. Like every map says otherwise, where it's Russian or
yeah,
Ukrainian, so they might just go back to square one and be like, in order for peace, Russia's gonna be like, let me have Luhansk, Donetsk. You guys keep the rest, and
yeah.
that's it.
I mean the biggest thing that's kept the Europe from war is the EU. Um, and the fact that everybody within your country is European. And so the one country where everybody is not Ukrainian, guess what? There's war. Same within Azerbaijan. The same where was it Azerbaijan and what's the other country?
Armenia,
Armenia. There are a bunch of
the same thing.
Armenians that want to leave.
It's the same
They're,
situation.
yeah, it's the same thing. So where everybody is holistic in the society, there is no war. But where there isn't, Turkey, eh?
Yeah,
Israel and Palestine, there is
political.
yeah, there's war. So I think it's going to be the best thing for them in the end if they just let
Yeah,
the Russians take them.
yeah,
Maybe Russia will just say, "All right, whatever, we won't do anything anymore." They're too afraid to get even closer.
yeah. And that's a pretty fair point and a good way to top off that section. So we'll keep you guys updated if there's anything else that goes on in Ukraine. So for our next topic that we want to discuss is addressing recession fears. So there's been a big talk about whether or not 2023 will be a mild recession or full-blown recession or no recession at all. So it depends on where you get your news source from. Each piece of news source says otherwise. One will say, it's just gonna be a mild recession, quick recovery. We're just gonna skinny dip and we're out. Some say we're not. We're gonna crash. We're gonna go straight into a recession. And then some say like, nah, we're no recession at all. So what do you think?
Yeah. This is direct reminder for all you people who are older than we are of 2008. Yeah, we were 6 years old. We were young.
I have no idea.
Yeah, we were very
We
young.
were young. We were
But I've seen a lot of videos, and one of the things is half people were like, "Oh, there's nothing coming," but then all the billionaires and millionaires came out and said, "Oh, Lehman's Brothers is going to collapse." And well, what happened? Lehman's Brothers collapsed. So it's interesting because on one side, you 50% of economists are saying
no
nothing.
recession.
Then you have
The other 50.
the other 50 who are like miles, and some are okay, we're gonna like crash. This could be the biggest crash of our lifetime. There are some, and a lot of billionaires that I see of millionaires are saying this could be the biggest crash of our lifetime and the biggest opportunity for young people.
I do agree that this could be a big opportunity for us. This is where if it does go into recession, even if we do draw back, even if the global economy contracts even just a little bit, it's still an opportunity for us young people to get our hands into the markets.
Yeah, I agree. Because I mean, the one thing that's happening right now is generation. Uh, the boomers are they're all dying. They're all
Yep.
getting really old. So that there's going to be not only if there's a recession, but also the biggest transfer of wealth
Oh
in
yeah.
history from properties that used to be worth $5 are now worth $1 million. And I'm just obviously exaggerating. But a lot of children grandchildren are going to be getting properties that could be worth millions of dollars, assets that are worth millions of dollars, big payments from wealth funds that are could be worth millions of dollars. So I think if a recession does happen in the middle of the wealth transfer, that could be really bad. But who knows what's going to happen?
Well, my prediction for what might happen this year is I think that recession is going to be regional, rather than, like we're all in a recession. We're all not in a recession. I think for the first time in our history, we might see different portions be in a recession and some of us not be in a recession. So, like if you're Great Britain, that Great Britain has the highest chance of entering a recession because they have
Yeah,
people on strike. Inflation is it in the two digits, like
it's up
10%?
there. It's up there. I don't
It's
know
some
exactly the two digits.
it's
It's
I know it's higher than 8%. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be more regional based, where more developing countries are going to be hurt more economically. And unless you're a G7 country, then
the current inflation rate in the UK is 9.2%.
oh, wow,
Very high. So,
because with everyone striking,
yeah. Um,
the
I'm,
economic concerns in the UK, yeah, they might see the heaviest recession maybe
yeah,
um, by any other country in the world. I think the US might be able to just uh, pull ourselves out of this one. Maybe one
yeah,
more interest rate increase, and I think that would be it for Powell, unless we might see like maybe two or three times where interest rates might go up, a quarter of a percentage point.
yeah. I'm, I agree to an extent that it's going to be regional. Only because of what happened after COVID. COVID changed a lot of things
Yep.
for us. And especially in the battle of globalization. A lot of countries are rising nationalists. The first one was the UK, and then the United States in
Yeah.
in the Trump administration, and then you go over to Italy. France is experiencing now, even though Macron is still in office, but he won by like
A hair.
March.
A hair.
March. It was so small. Um, so you could see a lot of the shift into more nationalist economies changing, which could lead to more regional recessions. The only thing I'll say about the future predicting what's going to happen is the fact that we were just in one in COVID, and the reason why we're not. Well, obviously, one of the main reasons is Russia. We'll get that out of the way, though. But
Yep.
the other reason is that there's just policy making on all sides to fix supply chains
Oh yeah.
and then also to
Uh,
fix energy.
yeah.
Yeah.
The only way we're gonna, avert, avoid these recession fears is of two-way. We get the energy crisis solved, and we create, reliable solutions, not something temporary that, is just like there for today and tomorrow. We need solid, concrete policy making that'll last us 50 years, 100-year generational plans, right? Long-term plans, and obviously supply chain issues as well. Energy is big, and it's also one of the big talking points today is how do we address the energy crisis, which is pretty much like one of the biggest factors.
Oil.
Oil, yeah. For those that are concerned about oil, right? Oil, we can't just directly shift into renewables. A direct shift like that, just like an on-off switch of like, hey, we're banning everything oil to everything renewable is not only would that cause a recession, that would cause a depression. It would cause
Yeah.
major economic drawbacks to flip the switch like that. What we need right now, temporarily, right? We need like maybe another 10, 20 years of oil. And with that oil we're digging out to actually be put into good use to create things like renewable sources that we need, right? But even then, digging for lithium is environmentally detrimental, and we have to be careful with the way we do mine for lithium, right? So addressing the energy crisis is not something that could be flipped in a switch and fixed. It takes time. Once you go into this hole, it's going to be hard to dig out of it. And I think that's what the world is seeing that right now, that we need the oil and there's all obviously like natural supplies as well, but natural gas and oil come first right now because that's what our economy is relying on. And then we need to make our shift to have our entire economies relying on renewable stuff.
Yeah. I totally agree. The one thing about energy that's it's really important is diversification of energy because
Right.
things happen. Electric power grids go out. Gas petroleum plants can shut down. If we have nuclear power plants, things can go wrong. You need to have diversification
I mean,
of
even with the
energy.
nuclear power plant, how often does an incident like that occur?
I
At
mean,
Chernobyl.
Chernobyl, Japan,
Yeah.
Hawaii, or was it Hawaii?
Um,
I know Japan was wrong. China had a problem a
yeah,
little bit, but there's a thing.
that could just be poor management.
It's obvious. It's
It's
clearly poor
it's
management.
poor management.
Yeah,
Right.
because China hasn't had a spill since the 90s, and they're building nuclear power plants like they're making donuts. They're just coming up out of nowhere. And look, for those of you who hate
Nuclear.
or maybe not agree with nuclear energy, I'll spit some facts for you for a second. I've been in our Model United Nations team here at the university, and I've been on MPT twice, so I research a lot about nuclear energy. It is 92% efficiency on average. The lowest average is 89%. The highest average is 97%. So not only is inefficient, it's also the cleanest form because the only byproduct is figuring out where to dispose of it. And I think if the United States and countries are smart, as they go to Elon Musk or NASA, they give them a contract and they say, hey, build us a rocket that can dispose of nuclear energy, shoot it into space, have it go as far as it can go, have it explode, or just send out into the atmosphere
Right.
and dispose of
I
it.
mean, there's
It might be
even
down the line, but
yeah,
it's a good start.
that but there's even ways you can. I remember I was doing research on what people have done with nuclear waste. There's two ways. You put it in a container and let the rest of the material just fizzle out until where it's just
Oh
like
yeah, that's right.
not harmable, right? Or there's a way, I forgot what the word was. It was called. It was called what you could do with nuclear material is that you can combine it with used, right, and new, and you put the two together, and then you get recyclable nuclear. I forgot what that process was called, but
Yeah,
those are your two options with dealing with nuclear waste. Sending a rocket,
yeah,
and sending it far away is probably the most expensive one out of those two.
yeah. It's very expensive.
But even just putting in like a you know anti like a radioactive like protection like container, and then just leaving it there until the material fizzles out, which does take like a lot of years for it to. And by the time where it's just like we'll be digging up so much coal. So that's the biggest concern with nuclear waste, nuclear power. But I mean, right now with how the economy is going and how what we need is we need energy. Nuclear. We need nuclear. We
Yeah,
need nuclear power. We need oil to get us jump started, and then we can continue working on our renewable stuff and
yeah,
then plug that into the power grid. We will not have an energy crisis for God knows how long. But again, these are long-term solutions we need.
yeah.
It can't just be something like I'll fund this project, I'll fund that.
Or where the EU
We
is sitting there, they're like, "Oh, we have 95% gas reserves for the winter." It's like,
it's
uh,
Like,
for the winter.
that's great and all, but your people need
What about
like,
next winter?
yeah. What about the winter after that? What about everything else? So,
Europe is extremely lucky right now that it is as warm as it is in the winter, as it is in the United States, because 95% for 700 million people, you're talking like 50 million people that can not have energy
right.
and freeze to death. So they are extremely lucky. To go back to nuclear energy, if you all weren't up in the news in September or something in October, that scientists finally created a net gain of energy out of nuclear fusion, I believe it was,
Hmm.
which is recyclable use of energy. So 20, 30 years down the line, we might not even need a disposable way of nuclear energy if it's reusable.
Right. And that's going back to my point of being able to recycle that and somehow combining, obviously we're not scientists and not experts on this, but
No.
yeah, I'm sure there'll be some time in the future where scientists come out with like being able to recycle and, as we dig up uranium, and uranium lasts for hundreds of years. I mean, if you still go to Hiroshima, it's still a little bit radioactive, like the environment, but it's not like crazy enough. You
No.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, by
No.
the time I think Hiroshima's like completely like no, no,
It's
no.
close. There's probably like another like 50 years it'll need before you
Yeah,
have zero radiation.
yeah,
But it's at a point where you can just walk around, not and be exposed to it and be fine.
and yeah,
But yeah, just if we want to solve the energy crisis now, it's got to be oils and natural gases. For all of
for
you
now.
guys who are thinking about, well, okay, we have so many cars on the roads and the gas that's being put into the atmosphere, the carbon. I will tell you this. So my father is a mechanic in the United States military. He works on engines all the time.
Hmm.
He said that the modern engines in modern cars from 2019 and on produce basically a net zero of carbon when it leaves the car,
Hmm.
which I am not a mechanic. I am not a scientist. I do not understand all that stuff, but my dad does. He says it's basically a net zero production of carbon,
Almost
which
there,
is,
right?
yeah, almost.
Yeah,
It
almost.
makes it like almost a net zero, which if you look at the production of the batteries for the cars, it's basically going to be the same thing as producing the car for a gasoline car. So for now, there's really no point of going to electric. I think electric is right now more of not a fad, but a luxury
People
for,
think that's luxury, and that's not a cool way to put luxury cars. Companies out here are saying like buy this because it makes you luxurious. Like
yeah.
that's not our
And
goal.
then our government is sitting there saying, "Oh, we want to move everything to electric, but the
What
cheapest
do you
electric."
mean? Like what? I don't have that type of money, for example.
Yeah,
How are we going to, how do you want me to buy this when I don't have that money?
I can tell you right now. Um, I don't know the exact cheapest car on the market, but I've done research on this. The cheapest car that I've found on the market is the new Hyundai SUV. I forget what it's called.
I think it's the
It's
Kona, right?
no, maybe it could be that.
Oh, Ionic?
Maybe the Ioniq. Yeah,
It's either Ionic or Kona. Both are
yeah.
electric.
That is the cheapest electric car on the market. How much do you think it costs?
Probably like 30 maybe?
Actually, it's cheaper than that, but still $22,000. The average American who is living in an apartment building with two kids, let's say a wife making, let's say a net 70 grand a year, is not going to be able to afford a $22,000 car.
Absolutely. And especially in today's economy and with
No way.
cars are, I mean, prices are starting to go down a little bit, but regardless, I mean, like they want to shift to this, but then this goes back to the supply chain problem that's causing that could cause a possible recession. Now you have to get everything out there. How you do that? We don't have the proper supply. That's why everything's costing so much more because we can't get it out onto the markets.
There's so much demand and not enough supply.
Exactly.
And then they have to do the other thing.
2021 was like a buying year. Everyone
Yeah,
was buying, and it caused us like
major problems.
yeah. And this is where we are right now. The demand was so high because everyone was just locked in. Everyone bought everything. Now we don't have the upkeep for it,
Yep.
and here we are.
Yeah.
Inflation's high, possible recession, but
Yeah. And then there's the
um,
other part of the environmental of getting the batteries.
oh yeah,
How are you going to dispose of those batteries? Yeah, digging for lithium, that's bad. There's no other, well, there are other ways to make batteries, but they're not as efficient as lithium.
right.
So it's a whole mess of things to get energy from electricity. That's tough. Batteries are tough. Natural gas is environmentally unfriendly. Of course, oil is fracking. That's unfriendly. Or
Yeah,
fracking's natural gas, but digging for oil
right.
is unfriendly. But at this point,
We
what
need
we
to
can
get
do.
out of this, possibility of recession.
Yeah, United States sits on $1 trillion worth of oil that's untapped. The Middle East sits on probably triple that. Africa probably sits on double that.
Chinese have their hands on that, so that's
Europe
likely.
Europe sits on billions and billions of dollars of lithium. If you really, really want to fix energy, we have to ignore environmental things for now, which is funny because at the last conference in 2023 for the economy in Davos in
Oh, the Davos.
Finland,
Yeah.
is that yeah, Finland?
No, Davos is in Switzerland.
Switzerland, sorry, Switzerland. Um, they said that the ozone layer will be healed by 2050. Which is crazy
We
because technically we've been putting out a higher net carbon in the past 2, 3 years outside of COVID than ever before. So I wonder if climate change is going to be changed to some sort of more natural thing in the future. We are not scientists, by the way. I read a lot about it and
Yeah.
data. So don't check us on that. But the narrative is starting to shift in terms of climate change.
Maybe we just the world has been cleaner, essentially too.
It has been cleaner.
Our shift, of course, is slow and steady, but because of our shift, you know, we're we're being, the government wants to be cleaner. They're telling us to buy clean and whatnot, and people, are doing that slow and steady, but we don't have the upkeep for that and the
Yeah.
demand right now.
The biggest shift for cleaner and like greener stuff was definitely from companies. Boeing, even though they make you know planes, they're trying to do it. Amazon is really good at it. Walmart is, yeah, they're okay. They're getting better. But
Yeah.
Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, IBM, big companies are going green.
At least they're trying to. I mean,
And
they
yeah,
still got to dig for lithium for their batteries.
yes, but they're doing better.
They're trying. But
But I'm just gonna read some statistics for you
yeah,
guys to kind of hand out there for global recession. So these are from Fox, CNN, and the S&P Market Intel.
nice.
63% of chief economists believe that a global recession is going to happen in 2023, and that is on from Fox News. China, which is interesting, has seen 57% inflation
Mhm.
this past year. That's really high, very concerning compared to the United States, which is sitting at 7.7. The highest was like 8, 9, I think. The IMF projected October growth in 2023 will fall to in October, the growth in 2023 will fall to 2.7%. And just to show you how the world market's been doing, 2020 there was a 3.3 contraction. We rebounded 5.8% 2021, then went down to 2.7, and then the hit and they're expecting was 2.6 as growth, which statistically the average growth is between in the last 20 years 3.6% to 3.8.
I don't
Interesting.
know.
Interesting.
I don't know. I think the U.S. might be able to hit that target. I don't think.
Yeah.
I think the U.S. might be only one of the countries, maybe a few other G7 countries that actually might see an average GDP growth by the end of this year.
I totally agree. And whether or not you are Republican or Democrat, with the Republicans taking the House, they're going to seek more economic things versus more social things, which is what Democrats usually tend to lean
Right.
to. So the Republicans are probably going to implement allowing more contracts to dig for oil. It has to get through the Senate, of course, which is obviously a complete mess right now. But
Oh, wait.
I agree. I think the United States is probably the only country in the world, along with France, maybe,
Maybe.
that can get out
I
of this
know.
recession.
Yeah. I don't think developing countries might.
Developing
Some of
countries,
them. Yeah. I don't think. I think like it's just going to be the top economies of the world that might be able to reach that target. But I mean, even if we do hit that target, I don't think inflation is going to drop to the 2% level that Jerome Powell wants and
yeah,
the rest of the world wants. Um, the European Central Bank has a tougher fight. They said they're going to keep up their rates steadily. I think it's between like half a percentage point, like steadily
yeah.
for this year, while the U.S. wants to keep it at 0.25 for the next 2, 3 months and see where it goes um, and stop, raising interest rates completely and let inflation drop and then lower our Laura Reed. So
Yeah, we'll see.
yeah, it's hard to predict because every economist says otherwise. And when you try to do your own independent research, you can't because it's just like
it's
everyone at each different like credible source, each different report all have different
yeah,
analysts and
they literally pull your brain like one's
right
pulling you right, one's pulling
when you
you
look.
left. It's like you don't even know what you're
It's like you can't
thinking.
trust your own judgment either because it's like, you know,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, we just gotta wait and see.
Yeah.
That's it.
I just want to bring up one more thing. China. Like, there's a lot of things going on in China. Like I said before, 57% inflation. Housing market is crashing.
Oh my,
Beijing is trying to um, monopolize itself as a public private owner, like they're gonna try to own everything.
hmm
There are protests for the COVID guidelines. What happens if China hits a depression? They are the second largest economy statistically. Looking at their numbers, they are 18 trillion in GDP versus
right.
the United States is just 25.5 trillion in GDP.
Well, I think we're gonna see a Chinese contraction here.
Okay.
I genuinely think, but is it gonna be a massive contraction though? I don't know. I genuinely think it might be just another situation where they're just gonna, hurt a
Depression.
little bit
Mm,
and then they're gonna bounce back like nothing because they have assets internationally in Africa,
yeah.
Latin America. They're looking to establish diplomatic ties in Latin America and try to get their hands on the resources there. So they have they have a cushion.
They do.
They have a cushion, and I don't think that the Chinese are gonna. Well, right now they're crashing, but I think the plateau is coming, and especially now that their COVID restriction policies are now they're lifted from
Yeah.
right.
They
So
had to because there
they had
was
to
2 million people
to
protesting
yeah, lots of pushback
plus
on that,
more.
and a lot of pushback from companies as well. People are just tired of staying at home when
Oh yeah.
for just one person that gets COVID, we shut down the entire country.
Yeah, I
There's economic implications, and with what's going on right now, China can't afford to play around, especially
oh
in a
yeah,
global economy like this. So,
no, I totally agree. China is probably the only country that has a cushion in the world. If they hit a recession, the only thing I can see happening is if the people just keep getting pissed off.
yep,
That could
people.
change a lot for Xi and how he approaches his worldview,
hmm
how he approaches Taiwan, and how he approaches trying to monopolize Beijing as the owner of all public and private companies. So I think that's a good place to end that discussion. You guys can make what you want out of that.
Yep, and we're definitely not pushing. It's just what we see and what we hear, and
Yeah.
pushing it out to you guys on what our thoughts are.
Yeah.
Because yeah, to try to calculate whether or not it's going to be in a recession, you might as well just go to the casino.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Spend all your money.
right.
Um, so the next topic, when we first looked at Peru, and I said, "Oh, this is a small topic. We should pick one small topic a week that people might not know." Um, this was 2 weeks ago, and now,
Yeah,
it's
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 just
headlines.
yep. It
So
wasn't it wasn't that big when we were like, okay, this is perfect. Like,
yeah,
we need something that's, you know, something that people need to know about that like major news sources aren't talking about.
yeah,
Like here we are now where this
it's
situation is getting terrible in Peru.
It's pretty scary, I'll say, because we'll just give you some facts here, some background. Peruvian President Pedro Castillo on December 7th led an attempted self-coup over the government where he tried to dissolve Congress of Peru. He's also been impeached twice before this by Congress. It
hmm
failed. The third time, obviously, it didn't fail. He tried to dissolve Congress, which I don't know their constitution, but I can almost guarantee that's against it. The new president is Dina Boliarte. I think that's how you say her name, if I'm
hmm
butchering it.
Close enough.
Being called, she is basically trying to create amends with Congress, in truce with Congress.
Right.
But then she also did this stupid thing after they were protesting and called for curfews and suspension of some civil liberties. They did not mention in any article what those civil liberties were, but
Regardless, I mean
yeah,
that's like
now she's trying to
martial
make
law
peace. Yeah, she's trying to make peace with the people. For
if they're putting martial law.
Yeah, for numbers, for numbers, there
Too
have
much.
been, as of last night, or actually, sorry, as of this morning, 60 dead and 1,500 injured. This protests are now moving into their capital, Lima. And in universities, which is interesting. Um, yeah, I don't. Pedro was initially popular as well because he wasn't didn't have any political ties at all. He was
Right. He
some
was for the
farmer.
people.
He was
He
some farmer.
has the people are attached to him because of
Yeah,
the feeling of identity, the feeling of having a voice out there that comes from a place where like people, from the villages is I think that's where the original president came from,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's why people are favoring him and that's why they're going into protests, regardless of, him trying to dissolve Congress. Um,
But he also, since he wasn't a political leader, he had no experience in running government, and
Hmm.
so another reason why people are so pissed is because his policies that he wanted to put in, he couldn't because he doesn't know how to function in government.
yeah, that's
And
also.
so they failed to deliver on a lot of things he wanted to deliver on.
So it's kind of like a two-sided thing here.
Yeah.
We have people that want him because of the feeling of, identity and representation, and then we have the other side where it's what you said, didn't keep up his promises,
Yeah.
him trying to dissolve Congress because he couldn't get everything through. And then even with the new president Dina that, is trying to put up curfews and practically martial law, I mean that's not you enrage people like that further, that's control at that point when you're trying to
Right.
make peace. Um
I mean, honestly, what are these implications? What do you think?
we're just gonna see violence continue this. They want what is it? Oh yeah, they want an early election request. Congress shut it down immediately. People are just gonna get
It's gonna be
it's
awful.
gonna be like this I think for another like a few months.
Oh yeah, for sure. And for Latin America in general, I mean, this is just such a struggle for Latin America. Venezuela being the biggest example of turmoil. Another one is Ecuador. A lot of turmoil. Latin America, South America in general. There are so many problems, and the fact is the biggest implication that I see is China. They are looking at this and they are smiling.
They're like,
They're rubbing their hands. They're like, we're gonna take advantage.
yep, because they're distracted.
Yep.
Peru is distracted. Latin America is distracted.
In the United States, one of our biggest policies since the Soviet Civil War era was that we do not get ourselves involved with governments that are not democracies. And China says, well, we're not gonna question your sovereignty, your government. Just let us in.
Yep.
And
Mhm.
because like Africa is owned by China.
Yep. I mean, in the next few months, that's not going to be like immediate, but that's one of the biggest implications is exactly that. China has been eyeing towards Latin America, and that'll be one of our points of discussion for another time. But I mean, yeah, uh, people are just going to get angry, and they're going to continue getting angry if Dina doesn't, resign. And I mean, yeah, it's just gonna be a bloodbath for the
Yeah,
next couple of months. That's all I could really say for this one, unless we have international bodies come down there and try to sort this one out. But yeah,
yeah. I am immediately thinking in my mind, the one way to avert more crisis is just go to the UN, get a peacekeeping mission, get some peacekeepers in there, get some people who can help run a government, and
but then again, it's just like how
so,
effective is
eh,
peacekeeping forces? Are they going to make a UN peacekeeping force like how they have in Africa and Kosovo and they might. I personally think we might see a peacekeeping mission in Peru if this continues on for the next
yeah.
few months.
At the very least, the United States should step in. I mean, we
Play world police.
look, people. I know, um, I know Republicans hate that. I know Republicans hate world policing, and I know Democrats like to focus more on, not really world policing as well. Like both of them, like Republicans hate it.
Yeah.
Democrats are just like, whatever.
Whatever, we'll do it.
Yeah, we'll do it if we have to.
Well,
But one of the reasons why we chose and why there was, if you look from 1991 till 9/11, I mean, the world was incredibly peaceful. There was obviously Operation Desert Storm 1, but I wouldn't call that a a war, more as the United States wants to protect its oil.
Right.
So there was an incredible time of peace and healing after the Soviet Union collapsed, and obviously since 9/11 too, we've been policing the world. Sometimes we just gotta enter conflicts because there are direct implications down 30, 40 years down the line that if we don't solve it now,
It's gonna come back to
it's
us.
gonna haunt us. So
I mean,
we'll see.
we have a thing here that says the U.S. is actually looking forward to working with Peru's new president.
I'm
So,
sure. I mean, she's
and this was, yeah, I mean, it was alright, kind
he
of
was
recent.
she was Pedro's vice president, so I'm sure she was a someone for the people, but right now she just got thrown into a predicament, trying to solve a crisis in her country.
Yeah, but the people want elections, though.
Yeah,
They want
and they
elections.
deserve elections.
Yeah, they do. Um,
I think if one of the things that always haunts countries is when they say we want elections and then no elections happen.
or like they do happen, but in the most corrupt way
Yeah,
possible.
exactly. And then all of a sudden that government just takes over whoever wins and gets the power and turns into the exact same thing that
Yeah,
was before. So I think if the United States or the UN can step in and put in peaceful elections, observe peaceful election process, you can avoid a totalitarian government um, and have some form of democracy or whatever their form is, because obviously a lot of people they believe is they're a sovereign nation, they get to choose, but if they get to choose through voting, you take the totalitarian authoritarian regime,
right.
kind of put it in the back burner for a couple of years at least, but yeah.
Yeah. So just to recap on that, essentially, I mean, the implications really are, for our future. In my opinion, I think we're going to see humans' rights, operation there, just to keep the rights in check because a lot of people are dying from this government, and then after that happens, we'll possibly see an election going on in Peru, but we have to, international bodies have to protect human rights and keep the peace there before any of that could happen, really. And with the
Yeah,
way things are going now, it's going to be a little bit. So, yeah,
we'll see. Yeah, well,
that kind of caps off our
yeah, we've got
headlines.
nothing else to say for now. Um, but yeah, this is our first episode. We'll just say, for those of you who want to listen, thank you. We're here just to kind of give our opinions and our research. We're, like we said before, international affairs majors, so we're studying
We try our best.
things all the time at the university. We want to work in these fields. So, if we're biased in some areas, it's just implicit bias. We're not
Yeah, it's
trying to
not.
be.
We're not trying to.
Yeah. So, yeah, thank you for listening. And just make sure to follow our social medias. This is our first episode, and
We'll
we'll have
keep
another
going.
one coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, more coming on the way.
And yeah, and I'm just gonna say a few final remarks. I just want to say thank you if you watched this whole thing or listened into this whole thing. We do appreciate it. If you listen just for one section, we also still appreciate it greatly. We try our best. Awareness is why we made this podcast. There's a lot of people that are just like unaware of just things going on. They read the headlines and that's about it.
Yeah,
You read the headlines, maybe a few sentences, but they don't get into the details of like why this is happening and why it's important for them to know. And everything that happens around the world is important. And, regardless of if you're just that type of person that just wants to read the headlines and a few sentences, hopefully you use this podcast just to catch up on everything that goes on in the world. And yeah,
keep it simple.
yeah, keeping it simple.
All right.
All right, thank you everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Yeah, thank you.